Pelosi said you had to pass it to find out what was in it. Now we're finding out what's in it, and it's horrible. All these horrible regulations. I'm going to keep my priorities of defending our national security and promoting U.S. energy. I have the opportunity of being the subcommittee chairman on natural resources for energy and minerals. We have oversight over the 2.5 billion acre federal estate. And I believe in public lands for many uses, including energy.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have hearings on the people who are attacking fracking and why they're all out to lunch. And we're going to just do a lot of good stuff like that. We're going to promote energy security, energy production in the U.S. I'm going to do what I can to protect our national defense. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I'm on this, among others, on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. That deals with our nuclear, space, and missile defense missions. And this White House wants to unilaterally cut our nuclear arsenal. They've already talked about that. That's horrible. We should not have done the New START treaty with the Russians in the first place. That would be even worse. They don't want to fully fund missile defense. And Chuck Hagel is not qualified to be a defense secretary. So those are my priorities. Those are the things I'm working on. I would like all of you, if you don't already get it, many of you do, but I don't think everyone here gets my weekly newsletter out of Washington. And you can't rely on the press to promote what conservatives are doing. So please subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber, go to lamborn.house.gov. You can subscribe to the weekly email newsletter, the Lamborn Ledger, when we're in session. I want to keep you informed on what's happening.
Stop the regulations.
Stop the regulations,
yeah.
That's right. You know, Barack Obama, he only has to do three things. Get spending under control, curtail the reach and scope of government, and promote U.S. energy. He'd be so successful, our economy would explode.
Well, he could resign.
So that's right, get that through his head, but so far we've been unsuccessful. Those are the things I'm working on, and I'm going to continue to be one of the most, if not the most, conservative member of Congress. Thank you.
Bravo!
All right, next up, it's my privilege and honor to introduce the Colorado State Attorney General, who's from right here in El Paso County, a very homegrown leader from here. You know, it's not every day we get to hear from someone who picks arguments with, you know, the Supreme Court. So he did an outstanding job on that. Although, Attorney General, on a side note, I don't think my wife's forgiven you for nominating me 2 years ago to be chairman. But without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the State of Colorado Attorney General, John Sutherland.
Okay, so the vast majority of citizens of El Paso County are out there this morning going to the shopping mall, doing all kinds of fun things, and we're in here. Why is that, folks? Because we understand one important thing. Elections matter. There's too many Americans that don't understand just how much elections matter. Do you think if we had maintained one of the houses of the legislature in Denver, that the agenda of the first couple of weeks of this legislative session would have been the same as it's been?
Nope.
No way. And let me just give an example of what happens when you get the kind of numbers the Democrats now have. Everybody knows that the Civil Unions Bill was going to pass. But folks, all the prior iterations of it that they had run had a religious exemption for adoption organizations. That means a lot to guys like me who were born out of wedlock, adopted when I was a month old through Catholic Charities of Denver. Catholic Charities has been in the business of adopting kids to loving families for 100 years. You know, in the bill that they're going to pass, they are going to put Catholic Charities out of the adoption business because they would only adopt to heterosexual couples. That's the kind of agenda that is being driven because of the numbers they have. Now, I want to talk to you frankly about the last election, because some Republicans I talk to are under the misimpression, well, we just didn't get enough Republicans out. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 2010 and 2012 election, on election day there was almost an even number of Republicans and Democrats in Colorado. But in 2010 we outvoted them by 100,000. This time we outvoted them by 50,000. 74% of Republicans showed up, 70% of Democrats. We are not losing the elections because too many Democrats are showing up and not enough Republicans. In 2012, 225,000 more unaffiliateds showed up to vote than in 2008, 4 years ago. And they broke 61 to 39 for Barack Obama. If we're going to win statewide elections, and if we're going to win elections the reality is now in El Paso County, if we're going to win in a couple of House districts, it's not just a matter of getting the Republican vote out. It's a matter of convincing the unaffiliated voters to vote for us. That means we have to, and folks, it's not a question of changing our party principles. We can run as the party of limited government. We can run as the party of personal responsibility. We can run as the party of free enterprise. We simply have to have folks that can deliver the message in a way that gets these unaffiliated voters to vote for us. I know I sound like a broken record, and for all the young people here, a record's one of those black things. But we've got to get unaffiliated voters. Let me end by saying, let me summarize the Supreme Court decision for you. The Attorney Generals won on their only 2 claims for relief in the case. We said that the individual mandate was a violation of the Commerce Clause, which Congress had based this act on. The Supreme Court said, you're right. We said that the Medicaid expansion was so coercive to the states as to violate federalism. The Supreme Court 7-2 said, you're right. But a majority of 5 went off the reservation and said, it's a tax. Interestingly enough, folks, if Congress would have said it was a tax, there probably wouldn't have been a case. But you know what? If Congress would have said it's a tax, it wouldn't have passed. So that's one fight. Let me just, there's 2 fights that my office is involved in right now you ought to keep track of. On March 6th, the case of Lobato versus Colorado goes back to the Supreme Court. This is a bunch of school districts trying to hold the state school finance system unconstitutional. They want to double K-12 spending from $3.2 billion, 45% of the state budget, to 90% of the state budget, and put everything else in state government out of business, prisons, everything like that. Complicated case. We're back in the Supreme Court. Hope to have a good resolution. The other case to keep an eye on, all the Democrats' heart is fluttering because a judge refused to dismiss a constitutional challenge to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Good news for you folks. The 10th Circuit recognized that that was such an out-of-mainstream decision. They took it at a preliminary stage, very unusual. Every indication to me that they're going to overrule that trial judge decision. Let me make sure you understand what this group of 33 people, primarily former Democratic legislators and current, 2 former Republicans. They're arguing that Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, where the United States guarantees you a Republican form of government, is violated by a system of government where you get to vote on your taxes and representatives don't get to raise your taxes. In other words, they're saying it violates your federal constitutional rights to allow you to vote whether or not to raise your taxes. I want to argue that case in front of the United States Supreme Court. Thank you very much.